We do personal lines, which includes home, auto, boat, and high-value home, and commercial lines, so BOP comp, auto, bonds, EPLI, D&O, all those types of things for small commercial, middle market, and large accounts. Our ninth program here, we launched on December 15th, is an insurance program called Mobile Rhino, and we had a little fun with insuring mobile devices. It's really our Stuckey & Company's 22-year-old specialization in technology that brought the Aspire A&E program to market. And so I guess without further ado, I will turn it over to Chris Boylan, our lead A&E underwriter, to present the Aspire A&E webinar today.
All right, thank you, Dwight. Good afternoon, everybody. Kind of like Dwight said, I'm going to try and keep this brief. We're going to try and get you out of here in 30 minutes or so. Definitely thanks to everyone for joining us this afternoon, or almost afternoon for our friends on the West Coast. Just kind of looking at the attendance list, most of you seem like you're a little new maybe to the A&E. Some names I don't recognize working on the A&E program. For you guys, this is going to be a great opportunity. Maybe consider this Architects and Engineers 101. And for some others on the list I'm looking at, this might be a nice refresher course, as maybe we haven't done some stuff in some time. So I'm going to jump right in here. Why are we here today? We are learning about the Aspire A&E program, which, as Dwight mentioned, is a Stuckey & Company branded monoline professional liability program for architects and engineers. We're going to, as you can see from the bullet points up there on your screen, we're going to go over what the program is, some of the coverage highlights, acceptable underwriting criteria, what you can expect from us as far as our in-house authority and appetite, and some general information on the actual quotes themselves. Just a little bit of background on the program. As I mentioned, we branded this program back in, I believe, 2008. And simply put, it is literally a monoline professional liability program targeted for architects and engineering class hazards. The intention of the program is meant for what we would probably call the micro business, these smaller guys on the food chain. Traditionally, if you've worked with us on this program, you would know that our target appetite would be firms that have a revenue band of about $1.5 million or less. That's still the case today. We are still extremely competitive in that size firm. However, today we do have an appetite for the larger ones, which we didn't have in the past. So there's been a little bit of evolution there. And kind of, just looking at the bullet points up there, pretty short and sweet and to the point. We want the program to be easily accessible to everyone. We want to be competitive. The coverage to be clearly defined and, have the backing of strong carriers for a broad form coverage. And that's where we are today. Speaking of the carriers themselves, right now today we have an all-encompassing program. For those of you that have worked with us in the past on architects and engineers submissions, you can probably attest firsthand to some of the differences over time. Right now today, though, we have different authority levels with different markets. For example, you've got about 6 bullet listed carriers up there on your screen. Some of them we operate more as like a broker. Some of them we have full MGA status where it's an exclusive, and others we have shared MGA status. Quite frankly, our job is to help you write the business. So if you are, for example, a specialty broker and you've already got access to, say, a Travelers, obviously we might not be helpful there, but we do have some other markets where we might be able to. Sometimes you're not going to like a surplus product. Sometimes you're going to have, for example, a structural engineer, and it's going to come down to underwriting appetite by the carriers. But the bottom line is we are trying to have a home for every submission in the A&E realm for you. Just a little bit more info on the carriers. Really, just as a boasting point, All of the carriers we deal with on the program are at minimum A-rated, and most of them are actually A+ XV, which is extremely high ratings by independent bodies. Some of them are going to be surplus lines placements, and in that event, we here at Stuckey & Company would handle all the tax filings for you. As far as fees, we're not going to throw, a $1,000 fee on any of these accounts. They are kind of regulated by the states. For example, Florida, it's $35, so nothing outrageous, but that's what you could expect if we're dealing with one on a surplus basis. Getting kind of into the actual meat of the coverage itself, we got 5 bullet pointed items up there on your screen on this slide, and some of those you might be asking, why are they relevant? For example, why is the word technology anywhere near an architect or an engineer? Bottom line is we need to serve the needs of all of these A&E risk exposures, and not every risk is going to have the same total exposure. For example, take into consideration someone who's doing maybe some software engineering for some manufacturing clientele. Maybe they're designing, I don't know, maybe they're using CAD software, maybe they're designing buildings. Yeah, there might not be a ton of technology exposure, but if they're doing building information modeling, it's probably pretty important to them that that's included. So we obviously have some of those coverage highlights available to qualified applicants. Kind of to that talking point, the form coverages themselves are incredibly broad. So broad that we only have a few endorsements available on the palette there. You see them highlighted up there, the aggregate deductible, which for those of you who may not be familiar, basically that turns your deductible that's quoted into an annual aggregate. We have the defense outside the limits, pretty self-explanatory. First dollar defense, when you think of first dollar defense, consider that the claim has 2 parts. You've got your defense and your indemnity clause. The deductible would not apply to the defense if they took the first dollar defense endorsement. Worldwide coverage, form language varies slightly by the carriers, but not very much. The kind of the general rule there is if you've got a claim, the coverage is written worldwide, and we're going to defend it, even if the work is done, just say in Germany or Brazil, we're going to defend it anywhere that U.S. law applies. Sometimes that extends to Canada, U.S. territories, but the forms pretty much are going to state the United States, Canada, and U.S. territories. Just kind of going through some of the main coverage features on the program. For example, broad definition of the term insured. Some of these architects are individuals who buy it for themselves. Others might be, a 1,000-man operation. But the actual definition is going to include past or present employees, partners of the firm, their estate. It even extends to legal representatives, joint ventures, organizations that are acquired, or even past directors and employees. So a pretty broad definition there of who's actually covered in the policy. Claims expense and supplemental payments there, the second bullet point. Very popular. For example, I'll use ProSite as an example. The form with them is written to include a $5,000 limit, and it includes items like, say, depositions or disciplinary proceedings. And typically what you'll find with the forms is if once you get to that certain point, in this case, in this example, $5,000, they kind of convert it from what we call a pre-claim, almost like a pre-claim expense, to an actual defined claim. The third bullet point there, innocent insured. Basically, I just went through the definition of insured. The CEO of a company may not know what all the other employees are doing at any given moment in time. So we definitely want to include, what we call innocent insured, which is kind of defined as dishonest, criminal, malicious, or fraudulent acts. Some of these policies include pollution condition coverage. Of course, full prior acts is going to be available. I kind of went through the pre-claim assistance with the claim expense, and actually loss of earnings is kind of tied to that. But those are all excellent coverage benefits. Kind of starting to get into what we're looking at on an individual risk. Up on the screen, you can see some basic information like the minimum limits, maximum in-house limits, and just to put an asterisk on the limits, we can quote 2 limits internally, but if we do have one that requires higher limits, it can still be considered on the program. It would just be on a referral basis. I'm going to throw another asterisk in there under the deductible. I list it as a $1,000 minimum. Some risks, if qualified, could get a $0 deductible. It depends, but keep that in mind. Even the revenues, like I mentioned, 1.5 million or less is sort of our goal. If you've got someone doing 2 million, it is no longer declined on the program. We can look at it, so just keep that in mind. Kind of just as we kind of go into the next slide too, when we're talking about underwriting of the risks, we're kind of, I've said this before, we're looking at what they do, who they do it for, and how they do the work itself. So kind of keep that in mind as we're going forward here in the next few slides. Basically, on the program itself, the minimum premium for a qualified risk right now today is going to be $750. I'm not really going to get into a ton of the actual rating factors behind the scenes kind of stuff. And even just a second ago, I said, you know, what they're doing, who they do it for, and how they do it. I don't really have a slide for the how they do it, but if I did, this is where I would include it. We are wanting to underwrite what they do. What's the exposure? Is it design only? Are they just observing the construction? How does the firm conduct itself? You know, do the employees go through educational programs? Do they go through a peer review process? There's a ton of things we look at, and you know, the most common question I get before a submission is, well, what's it going to cost? What's the minimum premium? Well, there you see the minimum premium, but keep in mind there's a lot more that goes into it other than just where they're at. Getting to the, actually, we've got a dedicated slide here that we threw in for the pre-claim assistance. This has actually become a very, very, I mean, I'll just call it a hot coverage item, so much so that it's included in most of the forms these days. I'll let you guys read that stuff on the screen. I'm not going to read it verbatim for you, but the bottom line is that there are a lot of E&O hazard groups that are extremely low loss hazards for us. And architects and engineers are definitely not one of those. So having the pre-claim assistance is really, you know, it's a great tool, not only for the insureds, but also on our side, on the carrier side. It allows us to get involved early with a claim, and, you know, that's kind of essential sometimes in mitigating a loss. And, you know, we realize that the word claim and pre-claim, it's, you know, pretty gray, and there's a lot of circumstance that goes into each situation. But basically, I just wanted to point out that we do have it, and it's at no extra charge, and it is a very vital tool, you know, for the insureds and the carriers as far as keeping some of these losses down. Getting into the actual considered disciplines, I mentioned, you know, the who, the what, and the how a minute ago. This is where we're looking at the what. What exactly are the products and services being offered by the applicant? There's a pretty hefty list of disciplines on your screen right now. And basically with our carriers that we showed you earlier, we can find a home in some regard for almost anything that you're seeing on that screen. And there's actually so many listed, I couldn't fit them all in one slide. But the bottom line there is we can consider in some form every class of business shown up there. Kind of like I said earlier, we're looking at what they're doing and how they're doing. You know, if you submitted an environmental engineer, 100% environmental engineering, we're going to scrutinize that one a little bit differently than, say, a land surveyor. So again, it's kind of one of those each one's its own adventure situations, but pretty hefty appetite there. And kind of finally in that who, what, and how mentality is the who. Who's the work done for? Probably one of the trickiest categories as far as underwriting the risk. And I will point out before I say another word, notice the red wording there on the bottom right. It's restricted, not automatic declinations. And I know for those of you that we've worked with in the past, sometimes these were automatically declined. That is no longer the case. For those of you that maybe don't have a strong background in A&E, looking at those bulleted items on your screen right now, you might think, oh, some of those aren't so scary. Some of them are, and some of them aren't, and some of them we just underwrite differently. For example, looking at the amusement rides, you're talking about designs that may be unproven. There might be some safety issues. Arenas, hey, every major city's got a sports arena, but there's funding issues, there's project complexity things we need to look at. Looking at, size is a good point. Nuclear and atomic projects, scary words, but there's health and safety issues that need to be taken into consideration. So that's what we're looking at as far as the project types. One of the traditionally awesome benefits of the Aspire A&E program has been that we've had a contract review service, and that continues today. This is a free benefit to qualified policyholders, and literally it's just that. It's a contract review service. If you want to utilize it, obviously they have to be an active policyholder that we've approved, and we would just need a PDF of the document that they want reviewed. But basically, what is that service? I'm talking in general terms. What the service is they can contact Clausen Miller and get a basic description of any terms in a contract. Maybe there's some party confusion, maybe the scope of the work is unclear, maybe there's some commencement time concerns, and then on our end, maybe there's some indemnity provisions that might be a little one-sided. Maybe there's some insurance clauses or penalties that we might want to review a little differently. And conversely to that point, what is it not? It's not a creation of contract service. This is a benefit to the insured, but it's not basically, letting them roam wild and eat up a bunch of legal. For those of you that have worked with us in the past on the Aspire program, this is nothing new. You can see the format there. We took some screenshots of the actual documents we send you, which for those of you that are new, you get a condensed PDF document. And what it is the format is the first few pages is your actual quote letter. You get an application included with it. And actually, let's get off topic for a second. Say you send in an application from a carrier that we don't represent, like say Zurich, for example, and we're quoting this through our systems. The benefit to you guys is that as we're entering this stuff, our systems are populating the info that we're using for underwriting, and it's throwing it into that app. So when we generate the quote proposal for you, literally every piece of info that you've given us is already pre-filled. All your insured would have to do is sign and date the application, and we're ready to bind. And then getting back to it, of course, the actual document, we're going to give you some specimen wording, the quote letter itself, a declaration page. Some people use it. Some people just look at the price, to each their own, but we provide it all. And if they would like to have it reviewed, before purchasing anything or compare it, by all means, they've got everything at their disposal. Speaking to the point of service, really more like a Stuckey and Company specific slide here. Kind of to my last point, we can use a competitor's application 99 out of 100 times. Every now and then we'll get a goofy one, but almost always we can quote off of a competitor's app. Turnaround times for anything that we can quote internally almost always will be within 48 hours, and usually less. I will put a little asterisk there. I realize things are time sensitive, but if it is a referral item, it could take a little bit extra processing time, but you can expect certainly within a 48-hour window for almost everything. Kind of to that same point, the third bullet point there, the policy is issued the same day. If we've got everything, if we've quoted it and you send us a bind order with, maybe there's a contingency outstanding, maybe there's not, but if we get it all, you're getting the policy issued that day. Very easy process internally. And I'm going to go out of order here. The very last bullet point there, I put that in red just to make sure you all see that. We do have direct billing options available for certain clients. And I know I'm talking generally. There are certain carriers that won't offer it, but that is up from none of our carriers not that long ago. So if that's of interest to you, I know some producers like direct bill. I know some despise it. Conversely, the same for agency bill. But I did want to make sure we point out that that is an option now. So that's going to obviously allow you to break up your payments. And then going back up to the fourth bullet point there, again, looking at the attendee list, it looks like most of you are what I would call the independent producers. If you are, well, either a broker or an independent retail agent, if you've got a specialty in architects and engineers, and we're talking, if you deal with 5, 10, 50 accounts a day or a week, and you are interested in it, I just want to point out, if you'd like to contact Dwight, we can set you up with a data integration plan. And I'm not a tech guy, but basically that means we hook our system to your system, and we can quote a heck of a lot of accounts pretty darn quick. So if that interests you, let us know, and we can make that happen as well. Getting to just some basic contact info here. Obviously, have met myself and Dwight now, and Jerry also helps out on the program. You can send any of the three of us directly submissions. We also have a general inbox. We've got a fax number. Any one of us should be able to help you out at any time. And really just kind of coming to the end here, I know I mentioned it at the beginning. Looks like I'm within my time frame, so I'm doing good. But again, I hope you learned something. I really, for some of you, this was probably more or less just a touching base and a review session. For some of you that are new to the A&E world, feel free to call or email if you've got any specific questions. I know there's a lot to these. And this was a pretty generic, kind of like a 101 kind of a webinar. There will be more coming in the future. We're going to have a series of these, and we're going to address more specific information on carriers and certain topics like risk mitigation and projects and things like that. So hopefully we'll be joining you in the future for some more detailed information.
Well, thank you, Chris. Great webinar, lots of great information. I know it's just an overview, but it's a great teaser, I guess, with all the coverages that we can do. We do have some questions. We'll take a few questions real quick. First question is, are copies of the presentation going to be provided through email as a PDF?
Absolutely, yeah. I don't even know. I think we've mentioned it at the beginning, but yes, we can send the actual presentation. I can send it to everyone. We can send it out, and hopefully you can use it.
Okay, here's another one. Are higher limits available? Specifically 2.2, and I think that probably goes back to when we were with Aspen, we were not able to offer 2.2 limits.
Yeah, I mean, it's for those of you who've done this before, it's if you go back to the days when we were solely a shop with Aspen on the program, yeah, that was a big deal and it was a no-no. That's not the case today. We actually have a few different options. Internally, we can quote 2.2 limits with multiple carriers. Going above 2.2 limits, really, there's two routes to that, and again, it's going to come down to the needs of your insured and pricing, really. One of the endorsements back on the endorsement slide was a project-specific, or sometimes it's called a specific job excess endorsement. We can look at increasing limits like on a per project basis. We could look at it on a blanket basis. I mean, of course, within the underwriting criteria, there's some what I'll call common sense. I mean, a firm that's doing $50,000 a year needing $10 million limits, that's probably not going to happen. But absolutely, it is something we didn't have the availability to do in the past, and we do now with multiple markets.
The next question is there a document explaining the contract review service that you can share?
Yes, and I apologize. I do not have it on me, nor did I include it in the presentation, as this was kind of a general one. But absolutely, yeah, we have, I believe it's a 2-page PDF that kind of goes into some information specifically about Clausen Miller, the history of the actual law firm that we use for that, and also about acceptable use of the service and Just kind of some clarification points. We can actually we can probably send that out with the webinar if that would be helpful. Absolutely.
We sure can. Here's another one. You mentioned revenue of 1.5 million or less. What about an architect that has 4 to 5 million in revenue?
Absolutely acceptable. Kind of like to my point earlier, we would underwrite it maybe a little differently because depending on which market and what their actual projects are, just throwing it out there, you know, carrier A might be a straight referral anyway where it's no issue. Carrier B might have some issues based on what they do. But no, absolutely. The revenues, I guess maybe to clarify that point, our sweet spot in our marketing and the way the program is designed is for the smaller firms. But if you have risks that are 4 to 5 million in annual revenue, absolutely, fire it over and we can take a look at it.
Okay. Do you offer monoline workers' comp coverage for an architect or an engineer?
That is actually a great question. I personally do not know. My background and on the program itself is with obviously the professional liability side, and that's what we're talking about is the professional liability coverage. I am about 99% certain, though, that we can offer that. It wouldn't be through the same carriers. However, if any of you have worked with Kyle Dalavis here at Stuckey & Company, he's one of my partners. He would be able to consider the workers' comp or really any of the commercial lines, not necessarily just the work comp, but the commercial lines aspect of coverage. And again, I'm pretty sure we can do it. I can look into that a little more specifically, but I'm almost positive that's not a problem at all.
Okay, and just one last one. It probably should have been addressed with workers' comp. Do you offer a BOP policy alongside the professional?
Yeah, kind of the same point. Yeah, Kyle would be the guy for that, but absolutely. And if you have a submission that needs multiple lines, just tell us. Send it, you know, if you're sending it to my email or the generic inbox, just let us know what you're looking for, and we'll make sure we get the right people working on it. You know, we're here to serve your needs. If you've got, for example, if you've got a direct market with, say, the Hartford, and you don't need the GL, just let me know. We'll just work on your A&E coverage. And vice versa. So,
all right. Well, thank you, Chris. We are extremely happy to have Chris Boylan in our office as the lead underwriter for the A&E program. I consider him an underwriting superstar. Really does a great job, gets back with people on a timely manner, and he's just a great asset to have. So we will end it here. Be respectful of your time. We already went about 6 minutes over. So I appreciate everybody attending. If you have any questions, please use, well, it looks like we didn't put well, we had email addresses on the prior slide, but it's literally just Chris, C-H-R-I-S, at Stuckey.com. Go ahead and email him. You can email me or Jerry as well, and we will get any other additional questions answered. So again, I thank you for attending, and have a great Friday.
Thanks, everybody.